In this craft beer tasting notes episode of Chop and Brew, we're tipping down Pub Ale, mate, from 2 Weeks Notice Brewing Company. It's a pro beer brewed with Chevallier malt, inspired of all things by an episode of our show. This video and the accompanying homebrew recipe is brought to you with support from Imperial Yeast, whose highly flocculant English ale strain A09 Pub is the yeast of choice when fermenting this beer. More info at imperialyeast.com. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the porch of Chop and Brew. I am Chip Walton. I'm here with Dawson, El Donarito. Donarito? That didn't come out quite like I thought. Anyway, we're drinking a beer sent to us from pro brewer Mark Avery, 2 Weeks Notice Brewing Company in West Springfield. The most interesting thing about this beer, well, the flavor is the most interesting thing, but how it came to us is he was inspired by the episode we did way back when called Storm in a Teacup Barley Wine, a recipe that Dawson had written for his mash maker book. Basically a smash barley wine, if I remember, like Chevallier base malt, which is this kind of like meatier, richer version of Maris Otter and other kind of English base malts, but used to be kind of the gold standard, right? Way back when, now seeing a resurgence. Mark Avery's antennas shot up and he was like, I must brew with this. So
he's a robot?
He is a wobot, as Jonas would say. So this is Pub Ale, mate. It's a beautiful kind of chestnutty copper color. The recipe, I will go down super quick, is 85% Chevallier, 3% Crystal 60, 5% Crystal 120, 5% Biscuit, Apollo bittering, EKG flavoring hops, East Kent Goldings at 10, and then suplexed in dry hop with U.S. Challenger, fermented with Pub Ale strain from our friends at Imperial Yeast. A little bit of sleuthing on the internet will tell you that that is the fuller strain, and it is 6%. So when you get a beer called Pub Ale, mate, you might expect like a 3.5 to 4% mild, bitter, maybe an English pale. Dude brought pretty much what I kind of think of almost as a session English barley wine, or you kind of said ESB, boom.
We're an Imperial session beer. That's a thing now.
Boo.
So, yeah, talk about what you get from it. You had some really interesting descriptors, per usual.
So, first off, I love the Challenger dry hops. Not enough beers are dry hopped with Challenger. It's got this really nice, spicy, herbal quality. It's a little more rugged than EKG, not quite as refined, not quite as fruity, but it stands up really well to such an assertive base malt and such assertive specialty malts too, like a lot of dark crystal and biscuit. You can still pick out that 85% Chevallier. It's got this really nice, rich, biscuity, buttered toast with marmalade kind of flavor.
Yeah.
And it feels really heavy in the mouth, right? Like big fat mouthfeel, but you pointed out it's very dry and finishes nice and crisp.
I smell some caramel and toffee notes, probably from the malts. I would assume also maybe the English yeast can produce some of that. And it is drinking more bitter than I would expect from how it smells. I do also smell the hops, but sometimes I don't pick up on those as much when they're a little more of a subtle variety compared to like a big American, brash, American aroma. But it's very clean and kind of a little bit more bitter and less sweet malty than I would have thought from how it smells. But it's doesn't take away from how it drinks and how enjoyable it is.
Yeah.
And I'm horrible with math, but you guys said 1 pound per barrel is about 2 ounces,
give or take,
for a 5-gallon batch.
2 to 3, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, fermented at 64, so it's got a little of this kind of that orangey kind of fruitiness, I think, in there to do a little bit of work with the layered malty, brown sugary, not quite into dark fruit, plummy, raisiny, but just almost, like I said, kind of the best part of an English barley wine toned down about a third. In
Yeah.
my mind.
Mhm.
I think, if I remember correctly, I saw an Instagram post on Mark's page where he was kind of nerding out. He was like, swipe past this if you're not a malt nerd, but I'm about to get geeky. And he really talked about how I think Bass was maybe one of his entry beers into craft beer
Oh yeah.
in the 90s or 2000s. And I don't know if that means like Bass number one. I don't know what, if somebody just said Bass to you, what beer is that?
Didn't they have an IPA back in the day? It's been so long
I
since
have-
I've had one. The red triangle,
Yeah.
right?
I have not had that in
It's been a while. Yeah.
decades.
That
Probably.
Either way,
high sulfate water and high hop rates.
would high sulfate be kind of minerally? That's kind of like
Mhm.
one thing I was going to say on the back side of this. I get this minerally, almost kind of like this waft of sea air that's enjoyable to some extent even. But yeah, he kind of shouted out to Bass, so I assume that maybe that was his way of saying I'm trying to kind of chase something that's in between this like actual pub ale all the way up to a Bass number one or something with a little more meat on the bones.
Bass Pale Ale. That's
Oh,
the one I'm thinking of.
okay. I bet.
Yeah.
Kind of
Man, that's-
hit this color though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet it's been 20 years since I've had one though.
Well, in his next box of beer, maybe Mark will send us some Bass Pale Ale. Just kidding. Just send us more 2 weeks notice, man.
This is a very enjoyable beer.
Yeah. And at 6%, like, I don't know, kind of brings the corners of your mouth up a little bit. Feels good, especially on a post-blizzard day here in St. Paul where you're like watching snow actually melt off your roof and you're like, yeah, we won. We survived.
I don't want to jinx anything.
Oh, goodness. Okay. All right. So, Mark Avery, 2 weeks notice. Thank you for sending not only this beer, but about 28 pounds of other beer. We're going to dig into some of those. I assume he'll let me link a recipe below. If not, rewind the video and write it down as we said it. It's all in the numbers. Chop for chop.
Brew for brew.
Oh, I didn't even mention. This is horrible. It was actually brewed in collaboration with their friends at the Miller in Great Barrington or Barrington, Massachusetts. So, should always point out your collaborators.
Screw them.
Chevallier, if you don't know, what's like the elevator pitch for Chevallier?
It's a land race. No, I'm sorry. Edit that out. It's a heritage barley variety that was sort of the dominant malt of English 19th century brewing. It was the malt that launched 1,000 IPAs.
Ooh.
And it's an ancestor to modern barley varieties like Plumage Archer and Maris Otter. Maybe edit that out too. I don't know if that's actually factual.
I think the Maris Otter part is right.
Plumage Archer is an ancestor. I'm gonna start all over.
Why don't we just start the whole thing all over? How about that?
Nah. Okay.
No?